Homer Simpson is one of the most unpredictable and lovable husbands and fathers in animation, but he's made more than his fair share of mistakes and bad calls. Though Homer learns a lot from his faults and mistakes, there's also a lot he seems determined not to learn from. He is compassionate and loving, but also selfish and lazy. He's a character who routinely shows off his good and bad sides. Today, we'll be looking at the best and worst of his actions. I'm Kyle with Wicked Binge, and this is Homer Simpson's best deeds and worst deeds.
I can't do anything right.
First up, we'll be looking at the good side of the spectrum. We'll be starting with the smaller acts of kindness and working our way up to the most heroic of Homer's acts. First is helping Lurleen. Homer, for all his faults, does care for his family. But it's clear the more the show progresses, the more selfish and careless he becomes. Towards the beginning of the series, we see a nice mix of heartwarming and callous moments caused by Homer. But one moment that stood out and is well remembered among fans is his relationship with Lurleen Lumpkin. After he and Marge get into an argument, Homer decides to go for a drive to cool off and ends up in a bar past county lines. It's there that he first hears the singing of a down-on-her-luck waitress. Homer compliments her voice and ends up going back when he says he can't get her song out of his head, claiming that he hadn't felt that way about a song since Funky Town.
I haven't felt this way since Funky Town.
He takes Lurleen to record the song, which gets the attention of a man who knows someone in the radio industry. After that, her popularity skyrockets and she makes Homer her manager. She begins to flirt with Homer, even with Marge present, but the man is clueless, brushing off his wife's concern as paranoia. The moment that made him shine was towards the end of the episode, where Lurleen was bold enough to make a move on Homer, insisting on being with him. Homer refuses her advances, telling her he only wished to share her voice with the world, and that he had done that.
All I wanted to do was share your beautiful voice with other people.
He hands over Lurleen's contract with him to another manager, and leaves her to pursue her career without him. This wasn't the only time Homer had chosen his wife over another woman, but it was the most impactful, even leading to Lurleen coming back for another episode in a later season where Homer once again offers to help her. The next good deed is giving up success for his family. After Mr. Smithers rejects an odd job offer from a woman in a limo, the Globex Corporation decides to go to the next person on their list, Homer Simpson. Homer is quick to leap at the opportunity and he moves his family to Cypress Creek, working under Hank Scorpio. Oddly enough, Homer is praised at his job, though he does very little. Hank is charmed by Homer and praises his ideas, encouraging Homer to make the men that work under him happy and productive.
The Lord gave us the atoms, and it's up to us to make them dance.
But though Homer is finally successful in making great money in a great community, his family struggles with the new setup. Lisa begins having allergies concerning almost every animal and piece of plant life. Bart is deemed to be a special needs student, and Marge is bored with being unable to fill her days with what she enjoys doing for her family. Homer winds up having to make a tough choice, discussing the issue with his new boss and telling Hank what was bothering his wife and children. Hank is supportive of the idea, telling Homer it's the little things that make up life, and that Homer should do what he thought was best for his family. We felt that Homer's sensitivity for his family and their concerns make it a pretty heartwarming moment. Homer was unhappy making the choice to leave Globex. He knew that it meant having to return to Mr. Burns and the power plant, and having to make far less money in a job that he didn't like. But he made the call to make his family happier, knowing that all he did for them. The third good deed goes to saving the sub. After Homer is fired for trying to make a giant donut, he decides to join the Naval Reserve. By the time he graduates with a few of his friends that also joined, it's time for the annual War Games. Homer gains the attention and approval of his captain purely by accident, with the man mistaking Homer's genuine confusion and desperation for actual commentary on the use of war. The captain makes the choice to put Homer in charge should anything happen to him, and it ends up being good timing.
Well, I'm gone, you're in command.
Shortly after, the captain is shot like a torpedo at the enemy and Homer is left in charge. Actually, we've noticed that Matt Groening really seems to have a thing for shooting people out of torpedo launchers. This is something that he would do again to Bender in Futurama. Not surprisingly, Homer is not good at making a call under pressure. He orders the sub to retreat, but ends up leading them to Russian waters. With a US sub present in Soviet waters, the threat of nuclear war becomes all too real, and the US decides to drop depth charges to get the sub to retreat back to safety or surface.
It's filling up with a clear, non-alcoholic liquid!
The explosion causes a leak, and as the submarine slowly fills with water, endangering everyone on board, Homer gets the idea to stop the pinhole leak by blocking the hole with the earring he confiscated from Bart before leaving. Following that good deed, we have saving the plant from exploding. There were actually 2 times Homer kept the plant from exploding and causing the town damage.
Who'd have thought a nuclear reactor would be so complicated?
The first time was in an early season where the plant was in lockdown and the whole town held its breath, expecting an impending explosion. Even Mr. Burns was sitting in his hazmat suit awaiting the worst. Homer was the one to save the town, but it was exposed to be completely by accident. As he didn't recall what button to press to stop it, Homer covered his eyes and guessed. He becomes so ashamed of resorting to a game of chance to solve the problem, he finds that he can't bask in the glory that he's showered with afterwards. He tries to hide the achievement from his family and becomes annoyed with himself when Lisa begins following him around as much as possible, stating openly that she saw him as a hero. Eventually, Homer is exposed. When trainers ask to get Homer's input on how to handle the work of being in a nuclear power plant, requesting he help train the new employees, there's another threat of explosion at the Shelbyville power plant. Homer is forced to once again rely on his game of chance. Though it does work a second time, he is exposed as a fraud and is deemed a reckless idiot for his actions.
Do you even know what button you push?
The second time occurred when Homer purposely gained a large amount of weight to qualify as disabled and be given the right to work from home. During this time, he is met with ridicule for his lifestyle and becomes upset with how people treat him, rushing home with the determination to do his job better than he did before. But Homer, in all of his laziness, had left his computer with only a simple drinking bird toy. With the bird knocked over, the computer was left with no order to ease the pressure building at the plant. What resulted was the message that an explosion was imminent.
The plant's gonna explode!
Homer rushes to the plant to shut it down manually after he's unable to input the command on his computer, but winds up being a hero in an unusual way. As he's climbing to reach the shutoff switch, the ladder collapses under his weight, and he descends over the valve that would release the toxins, making him a hero. It was an unintended and strange method of saving the town, but an effective one. Speaking of which, the gold medal for most noble act of Homer Simpson again goes to saving the town, but this time a different instance. Homer has saved the town on more than one occasion. While the immediate act that comes to mind is him saving Springfield from being blown up, we also want to mention another time where Homer placed the welfare of the residents of this community as his first priority. In one of the earliest seasons, after Homer is laid off from the power plant, he falls into a deep depression.
I'm a big worthless nothing.
Feeling as though he was running out of options, he attempted to take his own life so his family could get by using his life insurance policy. When Homer's plan was stopped, with him rushing to save his family from being run over, he was immediately drawn to how unsafe the roads in their town were. The new fixation led to Homer finding and fixing anything deemed unsafe in the town. He became the face of safety and was praised by the community for his care. Eventually, Homer decided to take on the power plant, having become experienced with all of the dangers of the facility due to his time there. This would lead to Mr. Burns granting Homer the title of Safety Inspector, which is the job that Homer has for the rest of the series. Homer gave a final speech to the town that he was unable to be the voice that they had come to rely on, but assured them that as long as he was present in the plant, can't, he would use his influence to help.
I have just been appointed to do safety inspector at this very plant.
It's a shame that Homer seems to forget this level of determination the more the show progresses, becoming complacent and uncaring. But it was a touching story to depict how he got the position that we see him in today. Now, with Homer's most good deeds out of the way, we'll be moving into the dark territory and counting down his worst deeds, starting with the least of the evil deeds and working our way down to the absolute worst. First up is leading to Maude's death. The reason we rank this one as the lowest is that it was unintentional on Homer's part. While Homer had butted heads with the Flanders family, Ned in particular, over the years, he never flat out wished them dead. Hardships, sure, but never death. But we had to mention it due to the fact that Homer did cause a lot of the issues that led to Maude leaving the confrontation to begin with. Homer himself actually states in the episode while talking to Ned that Ned should blame Homer himself if he was going to blame anyone.
I'm the one who provoked the lethal barrage of t-shirts.
Though Homer clearly doesn't want to be blamed, cowering when he thinks he might have earned Ned's anger, he does clearly understand his actions had led to Maude being caught in the crossfire. We give Homer some points for his level of self-awareness, but the pain that Ned and his sons have to endure just because Homer wanted to be loud and obnoxious at the game is not something that can be brushed off with a simple sorry. Next up, we have letting Ned fail. We brought up that Homer has wished hardships on Ned, and this was one of the worst times for it. After Ned invites Homer and his family to a barbecue, Homer only shows when he becomes hungry, not interested in hearing about Ned's good news. The news that Ned shares is that he was finally in a position to leave his job in order to open his dream shop, the Leftorium, supplying all sorts of supplies and items that help out those that rely on their left hands.
Sounds like a pretty dumb idea to me.
Homer is always seen as being jealous of Ned's good luck, optimism, and success. We've all been in competition with someone at one point or another, but wishing that someone will fail just because you want to feel better about yourself is really, really low. There's several times throughout the episode that Homer has a chance to help Ned's business, hearing the passing complaints of residents around Springfield in need of something that accommodates their southpaw needs. Homer does eventually come around, but we place the ordeal on our list since it took Homer a ridiculously long time to finally reach out and help his neighbor. What finally gets Homer to realize how far Ned had fallen was seeing all of Ned's family and remaining possessions in the car ready to drive off and try starting a life while living with family elsewhere. Fortunately, Ned was able to keep his home and his store. He arrived at the Leftorium with his family and found that Homer was ushering in almost the entire city of Springfield to find all the items that they had stated they needed, with Mr. Burns buying out all the left-handed can openers, finally getting Ned ahead.
Feel the wrath of the left hand of Burns.
The episode is a contrast of Homer's pettiness and his need to help someone struggling as much as he has. He understands how it is to fight for everything you own, and it was a relief to see compassion win out against his needs to see Ned suffer. But his initial behavior towards Ned was incredibly cruel. Next up is the neglect of his wife. Marge is one of the best wives sitcom families have, but Homer is not the best husband. Now, he has made some good choices to show his love for Marge. He refused the various chances he had to have an affair. He's told the story of how he and Marge fell in love a number of times, and he stated that he sees her as his queen. But Homer is also selfish and neglectful.
You don't even know your own wife's birthday?
He forgets every important date, buys gifts for Marge that are really for himself, such as the bowling ball, tries to go fishing when they're on a marriage retreat, and he gets intoxicated during various events despite Marge pleading with him not to. And that's only the tip of the iceberg. Now, unlike a lot of couples in adult cartoons, such as Peter and Lois, Homer has never once even thought of laying his hands on his wife in an act of violence.
All this fish represents is just how selfish you are.
Homer isn't an emotional manipulator, a gaslighter, or a user, but he is quite neglectful. He's essentially just a big child who doesn't really think about others or the results of his actions. And at the end of the day, oftentimes Marge definitely deserves better. Homer's second worst deed is the neglect of his children. Now, while we say Homer has never beat or hurt his wife physically, we can't really say the same for his kids. Of course, we mean Bart in particular.
What Bart needs is for you to strangle him with your love.
Homer is known for his anger and lashing out. We can understand that having a son like Bart, who displays little to no impulse control, can drive someone to the edge. We get that Homer is a fictional character and that nothing he does or says is justification for anyone else to act or think as he is shown to do in the shows. And we're aware that the creator of the show, Matt Groening, is not telling people to strangle their kids. It's a visual gag, and based on the tone, it's clearly meant to be exaggerated. But even without discussing his countless attacks on Bart, there's also the issue of him not connecting with his children. He's known as the fun parent, but his kids have expressed that they don't feel they really connect with Homer as a role model. In one of the first episodes, when Bart was thought to be a genius, Bart reveals that he was reluctant to talk about how he cheated to get into the program, stating that he was unhappy with the idea of losing all the time he and Homer had been spending together.
We're closer than we've ever been.
There's a good chance that the reason for Bart's lashing out, Lisa's bitterness towards humanity, and Maggie's reluctance to communicate with others is all tied to Homer's inability to be an influence to his kids. Ultimately, we only place this as second, as like with his neglect towards Marge, there are also episodes dedicated to Homer making an effort, hiring a detective to help him learn about Lisa, connecting with Maggie by teaching her how to swim, and keeping Bart from jumping the gorge. Almost doing it himself just to show Bart how reckless and selfish it was.
We got a pretty good kid there.
But Homer is not the best dad, and that is certainly something we're going to hold him accountable for. But then again, we have compiled our full list of cartoon dads in adult animation, and Homer is far from the very worst. But on that note, the gold medal for Homer Simpson's worst deed has to go to almost having Springfield blown up. For anyone who watched the Simpsons movie, you're well aware of this event. The whole ordeal began with Homer taking the easy way out and polluting, leading to him becoming a town pariah, again.
Evil!
The town undergoes a brutal quarantine that sends the residents of Springfield over the edge, hunting down the Simpson family and leading to them having to escape through the sandbox. When they learn about the plan to blow up the town, Homer is the only one to reject the idea, stating that they didn't need the town and had to remain in hiding.
I'm happy here. Screw Springfield.
Luckily, he eventually comes around, but the movie showed the most selfish parts of Homer's personality and showcased why he can be hard to root for. We not only see him let down his wife, showing he had no interest in returning her kindness when she had stood by him, but we also see him almost completely replaced as a father by Ned Flanders. We even get stabbed in the heart when a conditioned Bart starts choking in preparation for being strangled, and wondering why Ned wasn't doing what Homer had done countless times. And as we said, we get that these are fictional characters and that what Homer does is meant to be a gag, but it showed a lot of awareness that the show's creator and writers placed this interaction in the long-awaited film. In the end, Homer takes responsibility and is the one to toss the bomb where it wouldn't hurt anyone in town, using the skills he had learned while on the run and having Bart help him save the day.
That was a great father-son activity.
If a second Simpsons movie should ever be released, we really hope that it'll paint Homer in a better light. But what do you think? What are the best and worst deeds that Homer is responsible for? Let us know in the comment section below. Don't forget to hit that notification bell and binge our Good to Evil playlist, where we break down the morality of the characters in your favorite cartoons, shows, and movies. But most importantly, stay wicked.